All right, so back to reality here. We're going to talk about how market value is determined by resource guys, like what businesses actually pay for them. How market value of a worker's skills and knowledge is determined. How you figure out who makes more money, right? What is derived demand? And then how can increases or decreases in demand for a good or service affect income? Which that should be pretty obvious. If more people want a product and you're selling that product, then you're going to make more money, right? But if less people want it, you're not going to make as much. Therefore, you're not going to make as much money. So this one, like I said, is fairly self-explanatory, but we'll go through it. I think we got this first part down, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah.
This is what determines market value of a resource. And we put down that it's determined by the supply and demand of that resource, right? Did we get that part down? If you didn't, make sure you put that down, that market value is determined by supply and demand, okay? Just like anything, guys, if there's a lot of the resource and the demand is high for it, then they're going to charge a little bit extra. There's going to be a little bit more of an increase in it, okay? So supply and demand affects everything. It affects the price of everything, all right? The next one we're dealing with, put down market value of worker skills. So I'll just write down worker skills. Okay. So how do businesses determine how much you're worth, basically? What should your wage or your salary be based on the type of experience or knowledge that you have, right? So it says a wage or salary is the price of labor. It is usually determined by the supply and demand of that skill and knowledge a person has. So worker skills is based on, put down a wage or salary. Now, do you guys know the difference between a wage or salary?
A wage is how much you make an hour.
Right, like most of you guys, when you all get a job, your first job, you're going to be working for a wage. And what that means is they're going to pay you X amount of money an hour to do whatever it is that you are doing. More than likely, it'll be minimum wage because some of you will start working in the next year or so, right? And your skill level right now is minimal. I mean, you've not really done anything but go to school, right? So minimal skill equals minimal wage. Y'all with me so far? Now, as you progress through your life and the older you get, obviously you gain more knowledge and you gain more skills, right? You'll go to school, pick up whatever it is you want to do as a career, and you'll gain experience through that. The more experience you gain, the more money you will make, whether it be on an hourly or a salary basis. A salary is X amount of money you're going to make a year. Like teachers are paid a salary, okay? So, like if we're not here for 2 weeks because of snow, we still make a certain amount of money because we signed the contract. You guys understand that? So a wage is based on hourly. A salary is based over a year or a contract situation, okay? So, worker skills, you get a wage or salary and it's based on the price of labor, okay? So you may want to put that in parentheses. Price of labor. Solomon, you good, buddy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I get them a lot.
When I was younger, I was like that too. So worker skills, you get a wage or salary, and it's based on the supply or demand of that skill. So put down underneath worker skills that it's determined by the supply and demand of skills and knowledge. So determined by supply and demand. Of the skills and knowledge. You take somewhere like Carroll County where it's a small area, you have a lot of people doing the same type of jobs like construction sites, people who build homes, right? So a lot of people choose individuals on who they want to build their homes based on their reputation, right? how they've treated other people, and then obviously how much they're going to charge them, right? So we have a lot of knowledgeable people in this area that do things like that, but they're competing with one another. So can they charge whatever they want to build a home or to, no, they can't. Okay, so if the supply of something is high, then they're competing with one another. So the price is going to be pretty average. Now you take someone who has a job in Carroll County that nobody, or not just Carroll County, just in general, that nobody really wants to do, right? But they're essential, okay? Those are the jobs you're going to make a lot of money in, okay? So just keep that in mind. So a worker's skill, you're paid by the price of your labor through a wage or salary, and depending on how much supply and demand of that skill and knowledge is how much you make. Pretty simple, right? Pretty easy stuff, I think, okay? Next question, it says, what is derived demand? So just simply write down derived demand. Now, before we explain that, let's make sure we know what just demand means. Just what the word demand is. And that is when consumers have the want or the ability to buy something, right? Demand is when we want something. And it could be a business too, right? But it's when we want something. So, what is derived demand? It says the demand of resources, including labor, comes from or is derived from the demand for the goods and services that are produced from these resources. Excuse me. This condition is known as derived demand. So basically, what this is saying is depending on how much demand there is for a good or service, that will be how much demand there is for the individual to do it. Does that make sense? If, say, a flood comes through Carroll County and wrecks a bunch of homes, we're going to need a lot of construction people here, right? So the demand for that's going to be high. Well, resources for that is also going to go up higher. Does that make sense? So with what it says, what is derived demand? Put down it's the demand for resources. It's a demand for resources. Okay? And then what you need to understand is that once you figure out the demand for those resources, it's then the demand, write this down, derived demand is the demand for goods and services. From that resource. Now, does everybody understand what I mean by that? Does that make sense? Is that confusing? Excuse me. So basically, you got a demand for a resource, right? And then derived demand is what's going to be the demand of what we get from that resource. Okay, like for example, I don't know, take 2x4s. If we have a huge flood and it knocks down a bunch of houses, 2x4s are going to be a necessity because we've got to build them back, right? So wood is going to be that resource. It's going to be in high demand, right? All the things we can make from that resource would be the good or service. Y'all got me there? Okay. All right. It says, how can increases or decreases in demand for a good or service affect the income of the producers of those goods and services? This is common sense. If the demand increases, then that's going to lead to an increase in sales, right? Which will lead to an increase in us making money. So the example, I gave you two of these. I put the decrease on another slide. But it says an increase in demand for a good or service will lead to an increase in demand for resources needed. That's the deprived demand. Y'all see what I'm getting at? It's going to need more resources because the demand's high. So, for example, an increase in the demand for new homes will increase the demand for carpenters. See what I'm getting at? We're going to need more of them because there's more people needing this resource. The increase in demand for carpenters will likely lead to an increase of income. So let's just make all this pretty simple. How can increases or decreases in demand for a good or service affect income? Put, if increase in demand goes up, income goes up. So an increase in demand will equal an income increase. You're going to be working more, right? So if whatever you do has a high demand for it, your income will more than likely increase. Okay? So increase in demand means an increase in income because you're going to be working more. Okay? And then a decrease in demand for a good or service will lead to a decrease in demand for the resource. Pretty simple. If we don't need it, then we're not going to need as many people doing it. This can lead to a decrease in the income of those who supply it. So put down a decrease in demand would lead to what type of income? Yeah, we're not going to make as much. A decrease in demand would decrease income. Okay? And guys, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we need to spend a terrible amount of time on SOL 4. That's a really short one. Okay? So does anybody have any questions about that? Does that make sense? Tell me if it don't. Okay? Because I'm going to move on to 5 and then we're going to be done with that today. So we good? All right.